Out on the open range, there was one number that mattered more than any other, and almost nobody starting out understood it. It wasn't how many head you ran, or how many guns you had, or how much country you claimed. It was this: how far could you ride from your own water and still get the herd home? That number, the length of your own reach, was the real size of your outfit, not the land you claimed on a map, the land you could actually hold. I watched men forget that number, over and over, and lose everything to it. A man would get out onto good open country, grass running to the horizon, nobody else in sight, and something would come loose in him. He'd feel like he could run cattle forever, push his range out and out and out, claim more and more of all that emptiness, and from where he sat in the middle of his own spread, it felt true. It felt limitless. There was no fence out there, no rival in sight, nothing telling him to stop. So he pushed, further from his water, thinner with his men, his herd strung out over more country than any outfit could watch. And then the first hard winter would come, way out at the far end of his reach where he was stretched too thin to save them, and it would take the whole herd and the man with it. The thing that killed him wasn't an enemy. It was the length of his own rope, and the fact that he never once saw it until he hit the end of it. And here is the part I want you to hold on to, because it is the strangest thing about that edge. You cannot find it from the inside, from the middle of your own range looking out. Your reach always feels limitless. There is nothing out there pushing back. You only ever find the true edge of how far you go in one way, when you ride all the way out to the far rim and collide with something. And what that collision teaches you, this is the thing, is almost never about the thing you ran into. It is about you. All at once, exactly how far you actually reach, and where you have to stop. I tell you that because tonight we're going after a single battle that was exactly this, played out at the scale of the whole turning world. Two of the very greatest empires that have ever existed, each one marching outward for decades toward the other. Met at one spot, fought one time, and then drew back from each other forever. And the reason they only touched once tells you something about the limit of everything you will ever try to build. Let me show you. In that age, there were two empires, so vast, so powerful, so rich and so sophisticated that each one was, to itself, very nearly the whole of the civilized world. One sat in the far east of the great landmass, far to the west, and between them lay a sea of the hardest country on the face of the earth. Thousands of miles of mountain and desert and high cold steppe, a middle of the world so wide and so empty that a man could spend his whole life crossing it and never reach either end. And for decades, each of these two giants had been doing the same thing, without much thought of the other at all. Each had been growing, pushing outward from its rich green heartland, sending its soldiers and its governors and its power further and further out across that enormous empty middle, planting its flag a little deeper into the great between place every year. Two centers of the world, and each was utterly certain that it was the center of the world, the one true civilization, with nothing but barbarians and emptiness out beyond its edges, each reaching outward slowly, year by year, across the same vast nothing. And though neither was really thinking about it, the simple geometry of it meant that one day, somewhere far out in that emptiness, the two of them were going to touch. Picture it like two men, each standing in the middle of his own enormous range, each reaching his arm out across the open country toward a horizon he can't even see the end of, neither one quite believing there is anything out there at all, and reaching, each sure his own arm goes on forever. And one year, far out in the middle of that emptiness, by a river whose name almost no one in either of their two great capitals had ever heard spoken, the two arms finally touched. The Eastern Empire's army, led out by one of its boldest frontier generals, came up against the Western Empire's army. And they fought. I'll tell it quick, because the blow is not the point tonight. The two armies met by that river and fought hard for days. And partway through, a body of Allied riders fighting on the eastern side turned their coats and went over to the other. And that turning broke the Eastern Army's back. It was routed. Its general got away with a remnant and rode hard for home. leaving a great many of his men dead by that river so far from anywhere. Now, here is what everyone wants this battle to be, and what it simply was not. People will tell you this was the great clash of East and West, the day two civilizations collided, the day the fate of half the world was decided. Some will even tell you the battle's true meaning is in a craft that trickled out of it afterward and slowly changed the world. Set all of that aside tonight. The grand civilizational clash is mostly a story we told ourselves long after, because we cannot stand for two giants to meet and have it come to nothing. And the thing that trickled out afterward, that is a story about what seeps through the cracks of history. And it is a fine story, but it is not the one I rode all this way to show you. Here is the truth, and it is stranger and deeper than any of that. That river was not the center of anything. It was the worn, ragged, far edge of both empires at the very same time. The one single spot on the whole round earth where each of these two giants had marched until it simply could not march one more mile from home. The Eastern Army was at the absolute end of its supply, its reach, its rope. Thousands of miles from the green heartland that fed it. And the Western Army was at the very end of its own. They did not meet in the middle of a war. They met at the exact, precise point where each of them entirely on its own had finally run clean out of road. And that one fact is why, for all the blood spilled by that river, almost nothing came of it. Follow it through because it is beautiful, in a hard way. The winner could not follow up, could not chase the broken enemy home, could not press on east into the other empire's lands and take them, because the winner was also standing at the very end of its own reach. To pursue would have meant marching out past the edge of its own power, into the exact same exhaustion the loser had just discovered. The winning army had won at the one spot where winning bought it nothing, because it had no road left under its own feet either, and the loser, for precisely the same reason, could not come back for revenge. That river was as far as it too could ever go. So the two empires did the only thing that two giants can do when they collide at the shared outer limit of both their reach. They stopped. They drew back. Each one pulled home and across the edge it had just, that very day, discovered. And here is the part that breaks the grand myth completely, the part almost no one tells you. They never fought again, not once, not ever. The two greatest empires of the entire age met in open battle exactly one single time, in a place that neither one of them could possibly hold. And then they went home, and for all the rest of their days very nearly ignored each other. They even traded, they even, later on, helped each other. The great clash that was supposed to decide the fate of half the world decided very nearly nothing, because it happened at the one place on Earth where neither side had a scrap of power left to decide anything with. And the thing that finally pulled the Eastern Empire back from the West for good just a few years later was not this battle at all. It was a catastrophe deep inside its own heartland that yanked all its far-flung armies home in a hurry. The edge of its reach had already been found, out there at that river. The disaster back home just confirmed, in blood, what the river had already shown. So, if that battle taught neither empire anything about the other, and it didn't, they came away knowing almost nothing of each other's worlds, and went right back to barely thinking of one another. Then what, in the end, did it actually teach? It taught each of them the one single thing you can only ever learn by slamming into it: the exact location of its own outer edge. The precise distance at which its own power, its own reach, finally ran out. And that is the thing I most want you to carry down off this ridge with you tonight. Because it is true of every growing thing there has ever been, every empire, every business, every great ambition, every single human life. Everything that grows has an outer edge. And here is what almost no one understands until it is too late. That edge is almost never set by your enemies. It is set by your own reach. By how far you can stretch from your own center, your own water, your own source, before you can no longer feed what you've taken or hold what you've claimed. Your true size is not how far you can grab. It is how far you can grab and still hold on. And the cruelest part, the part that gets nearly everyone, is exactly the thing the cattleman learns too late. You cannot see that edge from the inside. from the center of your own life, looking outward. Your reach feels limitless. There is no fence out there, no rival in sight. So you become certain that the only thing that could ever stop you is some obstacle out beyond you. A rival, a war, a stroke of bad luck. And you keep pushing outward, certain your limit lies in the world, and you never once find your real edge until the day you collide with something far out at the rim and discover, all at once and far too late, that the thing stopping you was never out there at all. It was the length of your own rope. So the question that old battle leaves you with, in the end, is not who won. Out at the worn edge of two empires, who won turned out to mean almost nothing at all. The real question, the one worth carrying, is this: what do you do in the moment you finally find your edge? Because almost everyone, when they first slam into the true limit of their own reach, does the foolish thing. They take it as an insult, a wall to be broken through by pushing harder. And so they back up and fling themselves at that same edge again, and again, stretching further and further past their own center to prove the edge isn't real. Until something out at the far end of all that, overreach, finally breaks them. The way the hard winter breaks the man who ran his cattle too far from his own water. Still certain the rope was supposed to be longer, but those two great empires, when they found their edge out there by that river, they did the rare thing, the wise thing. They believed it. They looked at that collision, and they understood it for exactly what it was. Not a defeat, not an enemy that had to be conquered, but the plain and honest discovery of their own true size. And so they drew back, and across the edge they'd found, and they built there, in the vast rich lands they could actually hold. And each of them went on to live for a long, long time. The deepest thing a collision at the far rim of your life can ever teach you is not how to beat the thing you ran into. It is how big you actually are. And the rarest wisdom there is, rarer than courage, rarer than strength, is to believe that lesson the day you finally get it, to stop flinging yourself past your own edge to prove it wrong, and to turn back and build something solid and lasting and good inside the true and honest limit of your own reach. They called it the Battle of Talas. It was fought out by a river at the worn far edge of two of the greatest empires the world has ever made, the one and only time in all of history that those two giants ever touched. And it taught each of them nothing whatsoever about the other. It taught each of them the only thing that ever truly mattered, exactly how far it could go, and exactly where it had to stop. Ride with me.